He persecuted the woman who brought forth the man-child. For with the permission of the Lord, he waged unheard of war and persecution against her, whom he thought to be the Mother of God incarnate. But since these persecutions and battles will be described later, I will only say here that they were beyond all conception of man. Equally admirable was her glorious resistance and victory over them. Therefore, in order to describe the manner in which she defended herself, he says, "There were given to her 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the desert unto her place, where she is nourished for a time and times." These 2 wings were given to the most holy Virgin before she entered upon the combat, for she was prepared by special gifts and favors. The one wing was an infused science, which revealed anew to her vast mysteries and sacraments. The other was a new and sublime humility, as will be explained in its place. With these 2 wings she took her flight to the Lord, her proper habitation, for in him alone she lived, and in him was centered all her attention. She flew like the royal eagle, without ever directing her flight towards the enemy, being alone in her flight and living in seclusion from all earthly things, solely in communion with her last end, which is the divinity. In this solitude she was nourished for a time and times, for though this nourishment lasted all her life, yet it was more abundant in the times of her great battles with Satan. In those times she received favors more proportioned to the greatness of the conflict. By time and times is also understood the felicity by which her victories were rewarded and crowned. And half a time from the face of the serpent. This half a time was that in which the most holy Virgin was free from the persecution of the dragon and far from his sight during this life. For, having conquered him in her battles, she was, by divine providence and as victress, freed from them. This freedom was conceded to her in order that she might enjoy the peace and quiet which she had merited after having conquered the enemy, as I will describe further on. Concerning the time of the combat, the evangelist says, "And the serpent cast out of his mouth after the woman water, as it were, a river, that he might cause her to be carried away. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the river, which the dragon cast out of his mouth." All his malice and all his forces Lucifer exerted and directed against the mistress, for all those who were ever tempted by him seemed to him of less importance than most holy Mary. With the same force as the current of a great swift river, so the malice and the lies and the temptations flowed from the mouth of that dragon against her. But the earth helped her, for the earth of her body and of her inclinations was not cursed, nor did the sentence and punishment which God hurled against Adam and Eve touch her in any way. For in it our earth is cursed and produces thorns instead of fruit. It is wounded in its very nature by its inclination to sin, fomes peccati, which continues to assault us and causes opposition. The devil avails himself of these inclinations for the ruin of men, for he finds within us arms for his offensive warfare, and catering to our evil inclinations by his false representations and apparent sweetness and delight, he draws us towards sensible and earthly things. But the most blessed Mary, the holy and sanctified earth without touch of bad inclinations or evil dispositions, was free from all danger of corruption arising from the earth. On the contrary, since all her inclinations were most orderly, composed, and obedient to grace, the earth of her body was in perfect harmony with her soul. Thus this earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the stream of temptations which the dragon raised up for her in vain, for he found that material indisposed and unfomented for sin, unlike the other offspring of Adam. Their terrestrial and disorderly passions are more adapted to produce the floods of temptation than to absorb them, since our passions and our corrupt nature are always in opposition to virtue. On account of the futility of his efforts against this mysterious woman, Scripture says, "And the dragon was angry against the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her seed, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ." The dragon, having been gloriously overcome in all things by the queen of all creation, and dreading the furious torments of his own confusion and the ruin of all hell power, fled from her, determined to make cruel war against the other souls belonging to the generation and race of the most blessed Mother. These are the faithful, who are marked with the testimony and the blood of Christ in baptism, as keepers of his commands and constant witnesses. For all the wrath of the demon turned so much the more toward the Holy Church and its members, when he saw that he would be unable to gain any advantage over Christ and his most holy Mother. Especially does he war against the virgins of Christ, and with a more particular hatred does he seek to destroy the virtue of virginity or chastity, this being the seed and the inheritance of the most chaste Virgin and the Mother of the Lamb. On account of all this, the evangelist says, "And he stood upon the sands of the sea." This is the contemptible vanity of the world, on which the dragon feeds and which he eats like hay. All this passed in heaven, and many mysteries were made manifest to the angels in the decrees of the divine will regarding the privileges reserved for the Mother of the Incarnate Word. I have been short in describing what I saw, for the multitude of the mysteries has made me poor and halting in the words needful for this manifestation.